Hi, it's Dr. Parikh. We just talked about what is a literature review, and now we'll talk about what is a research proposal. And I've got my screens ready to be split up, so I'm in the main shared folder. Again, organization might shift over time, but this is the basics of how we would do it. So we come into, actually, that's not where I want to be. I want sample papers. Sorry. So actually, one thing I'll show you real quick in paper templates, there is no paper template for a research proposal, and that's because for this class, I want you to start with your literature review paper and just make a copy of it. So like if you were to just go File, make a copy, and it'll give you options to store it in your drive and just rename to research proposal. So there's no separate template. You'll add on sections. And we'll go through those sections, and many of this stuff is pretty standardized. And so if you look at the sorry, my brain just froze. um, if you look in the APA style manual, you will see the order that sections go in. So we always have our title page, abstract, introduction, method section, results, discussion, conclusion, references, and appendices if we have any. We do not. So a lot of this is pretty standard. You'll also notice I keep a separate template for literature reviews for my 300 level classes. It's more or less the same as the literature review for this class. So most of the things coming up are smaller sections that are going to go into your paper. So let's look at sample papers. Which one do I want to do? I'll do manatee. So we've got so and again, the sample papers that are highlighted may be different when you're looking at this in the future. Even if you're looking at it in spring 2022, which is the semester I'm recording for, I may switch some things up before we get started. Okay. So we've got LR and RP. LR is literature review. RP is research proposal. So let's see. I think I want to structure it like this. All right, and we will just kind of do our. Oh, that's not where that was supposed to go. Okay. So over on the left, we have our research proposal. So if you look at the title pages, the titles typically shift because you want to reflect whatever as you the words. So the main difference between a literature review and a research proposal is that a literature review, the entire purpose is to say what's been done in the past. A research proposal, the goal is to suggest and outline an idea for new research. And this is done, so when I do research, I don't typically write up a research proposal first. I would do a research write-up later. With all the same pieces, but saying instead of I will do this or I will analyze it this way, I say I did this and I analyzed it this way and here's the results. But when I do research proposals, it's in academic settings. So when I did an honors project or a dissertation, I did detailed proposals before, and a committee reviewed the proposal and decided whether it was sufficient for the kind of project I was trying to do. They gave me really helpful feedback, and then I went forward and did the thing. The other main time that I do a research proposal is if I want money from somebody. So most grant proposals require some level of a formal research proposal. So in some ways, this is just an academic thing, like just a university college class thing. But in other ways, you will continue doing it in the real world. But in journals, you'll never see proposals. I can't think of a time that you would ever see a proposal. You would typically see a finished research study. So the abstract is similar, and I think I may actually adapt a little bit to have you do more of a more detailed description of the study you're proposing in your abstract. Something that I'll warn you of looking at research proposals is that many of the proposals in this 2021 folder. And I may add some, I may update with some from this past semester that were really good. But those would have method sections. Sorry, my brain is not doing super hot today. But many of the 2021 samples do not have a specific study attached to them because as part of remote learning during the pandemic, I cut down the class a little bit. It's January 2022. We are very much still in the pandemic and will probably continue to be for some time. But I've found that it's created problems in later classes to not teach those things now, so I found other ways to kind of streamline the class a little bit. So you'll see some of the research proposals don't have a specific study. They're doing, they don't have as detailed of a description of what they're going to do. But again, that was causing problems, so now we've gone back to doing that. So abstracts will be similar lengths. Usually the research proposal one is a little longer, but that's more or less the same. So here we get down again. Some of the older samples had a slightly different structure to start out the paper. I think this newer structure streamlines really nicely, and I think it'll make it easier for the reader, or for you as the writer, and easier for the reader as well. So here you'll update to focus on your the purpose of your study, and you might update some of the specific literature that you're using to get a little closer to your study topic, but ideally, so the way you're going to get your research question is I'm going to give it to you. So when I look at your abstract and summary, discussion summary, and conclusion, I'm going to look at all the constraints for the class, look for the resources I have for you, and I will put together the best research question I can, the best hypothesis I can, given all of those constraints, trying to make it as close as possible to what you're interested in. And where is it? I think it's here in the templates. My plan for this semester is to keep a hypothesis list where I actually, for each person, so I kind of group for each class, and I have a central place where you can go back to check, because sometimes students want to update a little bit, and I'm very open to that. I want you to, as much as is reasonable for the course, I want you to have a say in what you're writing about. But one of the difficulties is sometimes a student will change it a little bit, but it won't work for the course. And then they'll change it a little bit for the next one. So we want to make sure we both agree on one thing and that it's the same for every section. So your introduction doesn't change much. The sample papers typically had pretty good literature review introductions, and so you won't see very many changes. That's because they're picked because they're pretty good papers. If you had a less stellar grading experience for the literature review, you might see more changes in your introduction. Now for the research proposal, the introduction, instead of going right into the discussion, has a present study paragraph where you link the research that has already been done to the purpose of your study, and you end with your specific hypothesis. You go into the method section. And there's videos that will go through all of this. This is where you talk about what you're planning to do. You start by talking about participants, and some articles will vary a little bit in what they call these sections or the amount of detail that they include in each section. But these three sections of the method section are pretty standard. So participants, talk about who you're going to include. We always want to mention age, gender, and race, racial and ethnic identities. Most of the sample papers have some other things included. I'm making that completely optional now, so you could measure other things if it's really relevant for your study, but you're not expected to. So again, that's where I'm trying to find other places to cut down a little, to streamline without losing the most important parts. And you're going to think through, what are you going to do? How are you going to get participants? How are you going to incentivize participants? It's okay to say you're not going to have any incentive. Why might participants drop out? And what are the requirements for people to be included in your study? Measures, sometimes this is called materials. Most of you will just have one measure. And for your measure, if you come here, so we're in the APA paper templates folder, and you come here to the measures, and I have all of these measures. I hope to keep contributing more just to improve the variety of options students have. When we do research, we don't just make up our questions. If you look at your studies, very rarely do they just make up a questionnaire. And when they do, they're typically not, usually if that's what they did, they just made it up. Either that's the entire focus of their article, or it's not a very good article in a not awesome journal. They're just like magazines and websites vary in quality, journals vary in quality. So not every article is a good article, is a high quality article. So typically when we do research, we use established scales where there's already been a lot of research into, does this scale work well? Do the items play nice with each other? And does it, is it, let's say so this is a measure of anxiety. If we take 100 people and we know from their medical records whether they have been diagnosed with anxiety or not, we want to see people with diagnosed anxiety scoring higher on this scale on average than people who are not diagnosed with anxiety. So we want to know that it relates to other measures of that, whatever it is that we think we're measuring with this scale. So a big part of writing in psychology, learning to write about research, is learning to write about scales. Students often just kind of assume that you just come up with questions that you want to know about. But most research, if you do ask a list of questions, it's often used as just kind of something to help you interpret the data, the scales and other measures that you do have. Next is procedure. So it goes through exactly what the participant experienced from start to finish. And I see a typo. Results section. Normally this section is fairly lengthy and has a lot of charts and tables because it's walking you through the statistical analysis. In this case, we're not doing statistical analysis. But I do want you to learn how we write about statistical analysis. So this is the other part. Oh my goodness, this is italicized. I'm finding typos. Everything else is fine there. Oh, this actually is missing some things that I want to see. Sorry. All right. So you're saying what you're going to report, how you're going to analyze it. This is the other reason that I control your hypothesis so hard, because I want you to have a hypothesis that can be analyzed using a single t-test. It means you're going to have a really simple research question, which is good because this is a training wheels paper. Now we finally get down to the discussion, but the beginning of the discussion is a little different. It's a little more in-depth, a little more structured. So in your original discussion, you were just kind of pulling out the main points of integrating main ideas in the literature. For your research proposal discussion, you are restating the purpose of your study and putting potential findings into the context of existing literature. So does it contradict? Does it confirm? Does it extend? You still have limitations. Future research. So you will still have the same sections, but instead of critiquing existing literature, you're going to completely rewrite it to be critiquing your study. And your study is going to be very simple, so it's going to be really easy to critique. Professional applications, instead of talking about how your articles can be applied, you're going to talk about how your study could be applied. This can get a little tricky because you have one main idea, but just think a little creatively of how you can use it in multiple ways. You still have a conclusion where you're summarizing the main point, you're restating the main purpose. Otherwise, it more or less functions the same. References is more or less the same, although I just realized this one is missing. So this one has boo-boo because Spitzer et al. Should be in there. And this is a great time for me to show you how we would do that. So this person is using the generalized anxiety disorder assessment. We can click here, and these worksheets have all the information. I might even simplify them a little bit because I think it has extra information which can be confusing. So I'm going to copy this, and then I'm just going to come down here and find where would, okay, alphabetically Spitzer would go at the end. I'm going to remove formatting as I paste it so that it doesn't have weird spacing, but that means that I have to italicize this again. All right, so you want to double check your references list. Again, yours is going to have a little more than the samples do, at least more than these samples do, because I'm having you use more sources but do less in-depth analysis of each one. But you will definitely add in whatever source you use for your scale. You probably, you won't most people won't have anything else added for the research proposal, but everyone should have a scale added. Those are the main differences. You can see they're very similar. Typically, students forget that they've ever seen this video. By the time it's time to do the research proposal, I might just start adding it in both places. And there's a more in-depth walkthrough of each section when you get closer. So the biggest change is you're adding sections, and you're also shifting the focus, and you're making sure that that focus gets shifted throughout the article. All right. I think that's it for now. Take care. Bye-bye.